All right, welcome back to the Awakened Avoidant. I'm here with Miss Samantha Barrett. She's a holistic health coach, owner of Sarobawellness, mother, wife, amazing woman. We had an awesome conversation last time. You're the first person that I ever had that got to have like a introduction conversation with, because I never know how they're gonna go. I just kind of just let it fly and see how it works. But we had an amazing conversation. Usually I come in with notes and everything, like ask questions, but after we had that one, I was like, I think I'm good with the notes. I think she can handle this.
Thanks.
So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming a second time, because it did not work out at all the first time.
But it did in a way.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. See that? I love that view. Yeah, it was actually, it sort of worked out.
We didn't have the cameras rolling, but we had a good conversation.
Yeah, we didn't get to record it because there was a baby shower in the recording space, which I didn't know that they do that here.
Yeah.
And since the walls don't go up to the ceiling, it was just tremendous echo and they were playing music.
Yeah.
So
Wouldn't have worked.
yeah, it just didn't work out. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Again.
I wanted to ask you, I'm just going to dive right in.
Let's do it.
Hopefully you don't mind sharing this. I know you said that you're an open book, but I wanted to ask you something that's really impressive that I admire. I have a tremendous amount of admiration for anyone that can do this. I know you're wondering what's coming there. So you have two children, right?
Yes.
And you had home births?
So the first one, the intention was a home birth. We had a hospital transfer.
Okay.
The second was a home birth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you okay with describing
Totally.
that experience at
Yeah.
all? Because I think it's amazing and it's brave and it's all the things. It just feels so natural and right. I personally don't have the guts to do it,
No, you don't have guts to do a home birth,
No,
Sean?
hold on, time out. I don't have the guts to be there to witness and participate in my wife delivering our child into the world. I'm too scared.
Well, yeah, I think it's a scary thing for the partner, no matter if it's a home birth or a hospital birth or whatever.
Yeah.
You are in a state of complete helplessness.
Yes.
And I know for Will, we've talked about this before with people, there needs to be some sort of support group for husbands who have gone through, especially husbands who've gone through witnessing their wives get a C-section.
Yeah. Trauma.
Yeah. Here we go.
Yeah, right. Purge, please.
No, but just it's hard for you in its own way because you are watching the person that you love the most go through the most intense, vulnerable experience of their entire lives, and there's nothing you can do about it, except just kind of hold space. Yeah. They might want you to get the hell away from them too.
Yeah, just bear witness.
Yeah. So my first daughter, Iris, was born about 4.5 years ago. I had a midwife, and the intention was to have a home birth.
Yeah.
Obviously, read all the books, listened to all the podcasts, but I had no idea what to expect. It was the first time. And I was about 2 weeks late, so usually they will try to induce you.
Yeah.
And I was so scared to get medically induced because I thought they would make me stay in the hospital. So I did it's called a Foley catheter, and it's not really natural, but it's a more natural induction. Super painful, often doubles the length in which you will be in labor.
Oh, really?
Which she probably told me, and I was like, that's fine, let's just do this,
Is the process graphic?
No, I won't no.
Okay. No, I was going to ask you to explain.
No, I can, yeah.
Do you mind?
They basically blow up a little balloon that's they put it inside of you. They blow up a balloon that's about 4 centimeters. And for the next few hours, you just yank on it every time you go to the bathroom to try and open everything up to get things going.
Yeah. Okay, so it's it is sort of as natural as something could be.
Yeah, but what I've learned is that your baby's gonna come when they're gonna come. No one's ever been pregnant forever.
Yeah.
Your baby is going to come out.
Yeah.
My husband, he's 6'10".
Yeah.
We have big babies.
Yeah.
My babies just need extra time to cook.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you put your trust in medical providers to tell you what to do because you're I don't know what I'm doing. I'm about to do what?
All of it.
Yeah. And my midwife the first time, it wasn't the support that I needed. And I felt like she didn't really believe in me. And so then I didn't really believe in myself. So like I labored at home for about 24 hours. She came and like told me I was progressing. And, you know, she kept doing cervical checks where they like open you up, look, check everything and tell you, oh, you're this many centimeters, this many centimeters. And I was in a lot of pain. My poor mother-in-law stopped over, Mary, to come say hi. And at that point in time, I was in the middle of the hallway running to the bathroom and I just collapsed and like peed, threw up, and also my nose started bleeding all at the same time. It was just like, she walked in at that moment and I was like screaming and she's like, I gotta get the hell out of here. And that just felt like the perfect vision of like what birth felt like in that moment. I was like, what is this? So my midwife told me that I was about 8 or 9 centimeters, which 10 centimeters is usually when you start to push. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this thing. Okay. And she's like, you know, whenever you feel ready to push, you can. And I'm like, I can't believe like it's hard, but nothing crazy. So I'm squatting. We had like the tub downstairs set up and you know, I'm in the water a little bit and she goes to check me again and she goes, it's never a sound you want to hear.
Yeah.
Actually you're still 4 centimeters, which I was 24 hours before. And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean that was a day ago? You mean nothing has changed with all of this effort? And she said, well, the top of your cervix is at 8 centimeters, but the bottom is still 4.
Okay.
So like virtually nothing had changed. And she said, I think that you should think about a hospital transfer. And as soon as I heard the word hospital, I was just like, oh my God, I failed. I couldn't do it.
Oh, that's how you
couldn't
felt?
do the natural birth. And that was just something that I had to get through. That took a couple years even after the birth of Iris to get through. But in my mind, I had this vision of just like having this beautiful home birth. And so we weren't in a rush. It wasn't an emergency, which was nice. We packed up all of our stuff, my lamp, you know, like my Himalayan salt lamp, all my things. And we got to the hospital. The drive there was brutal. It was about an hour in the car because I went to a specific hospital that had a really low rate of cesareans and like the lowest in the state because I really didn't want to have to do that.
Yeah.
By the end of that labor, I was begging for a cesarean. And my OBGYN said, you came here because you didn't want one. Like, you got this. And he was actually incredible. I had met him that day. And he reminded me, he's like, you need to get primal. Like, get into that. He's like, cough. You know, I got really sick the day before I went into labor. And so I get to the hospital. As soon as I got wheeled in the wheelchair, I was just a mess. I was like, this sucks. Like, I didn't do it.
So this is like 2 days?
So this was about, a day and a half in.
So are you like drained at this point?
Yeah, absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
I hadn't slept, and I didn't sleep the night before I went into labor because I all of a sudden got really sick. My midwife thinks that it was COVID, but it was before COVID was cool. You know, it was like January 2020 before.
Before it was announced.
Before it was announced.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Definitely COVID.
I was very, very sick, which is not how you want to be like the first time you're giving birth. Anyway, so got into the hospital and they said, okay, we're going to give you Pitocin to get things moving, and which is like an artificial form of oxytocin. And I was like, if you're going to give me Pitocin, I want the epidural because I know that's going to make things a lot more intense. So again, this is like the worst case scenario for me. Everything I wanted to avoid is now my reality.
Yeah, and it's all happening fast.
All of it's happening like that. So I get the epidural, I get the Pitocin. The epidural is not working. I still have localized pain. I'm feeling it intensely. I'm trying to get up on my knees to get into different positions to help baby move. And they're like, you have to get down, you have to lay on your back. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, that's not how gravity works. How am I supposed to lay on my back with my legs up in the air and push a baby out?
Yeah.
Which is how people give birth.
Yeah,
And then,
strange, right?
Yeah.
Seems counterintuitive.
Cascade of interventions there. So after, I know, they kept trying to tell me to sleep and rest. And I said, if someone tells me, one more person tells me to try to sleep, I'm going to punch you in the face. Like, I'm not going to sleep. I'm in labor.
Yeah.
Leave me alone. Stop telling me to sleep. You know, you're in the hospital, there's shift changes, there's the constant beeping, people coming to check on you if you do kind of start to doze off.
Yeah.
Hey, we're just going to check on you for the 25th time.
Yeah.
They're just doing their jobs, but it's not a calm environment at all.
And it's usually freezing cold.
Yeah. Yeah, which is not going to help your body relax, which it needs to do. So I ended up pushing for 4 hours. It was brutal. And yeah, and
I
that was
love the
like
way you
with an
describe it.
epidural, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just get the vacuum,
Yeah.
whatever you have to do. And he's like, get Primal. And I was coughing because I was sick. And he's like, listen, every time you cough, it helps.
Yeah.
So by the end, my husband loves to replay the sounds I was making, which are just terrifying. Probably something along like the lines of The Exorcist. But it was helping anyway. So finally got baby out. My mom says it's a girl. We didn't know either time, which was really, really special.
Yeah.
Not knowing who was there.
Same thing I did.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's the greatest gift ever.
Yeah.
So they put her on my chest they cut the cord immediately. They put her on my chest for 60 seconds, and then they take her right to the NICU table, all these nurses there, because I was in labor for so long. She wasn't in distress, but they had seen some meconium fluid, and so they were worried. She ended up being totally fine. They wanted to keep her in the nursery for 24 hours, the first 24 hours of her life. Not on her mom, that she just came from, but in a cold room.
Yeah, by herself.
Alone.
Yeah.
Which is just like,
Yeah.
wow. Luckily, my midwife was great at advocating, and she said, you're going to tell them that you're nursing every 45 minutes, even if you don't, so they have to bring her in. And they kept saying, you know, why not all the other moms are having their babies come in that often? And I said, just bring the baby in every 45 minutes. Okay?
Yeah, just do what I said.
Me.
Yeah.
And so I would just hold her, and, you know, it was intense. And in some ways, I got to rest a little bit by her not being there. But that, I think I made peace with it now, but that was probably the hardest part, was that I didn't know how to speak my truth in that moment and basically be like, screw you. She's not going in the nursery. She's going to be with me the entire time. And it's so sad because you're so vulnerable. You're so out of it. And you don't know. So you like let these other people tell you what to do.
Yeah.
That's why I think I had a birth doula, but she wasn't in the hospital with me. I think having someone like that to advocate for you, where beforehand you're like, this is what I want to make sure happens. If this happens, here's how I want to handle it, as much as you can. So I think having someone who's an advocate for you, if you have the ability to have someone like a doula, it's essential.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was in the hospital for 5 days. I was very, very sick. And I kept saying, I'm sick because I'm in the hospital. Like, I need to get the hell out of here. I need to go home. Like, I need my things. And I couldn't break a fever. So once I broke the fever, 5 days later, I was allowed to go home. I went home, went back in the hospital 2 weeks later for postpartum bleeding, because when I had her, typically like the placenta will be birthed shortly after the baby comes. And usually you let it happen, and they like, one of the most traumatic parts of this experience was I remember my midwife and the OBGYN yanking the cord attached to the placenta inside of me, like to get it out.
Oof.
Yanking.
Oof.
And like literally, it was not fun. And because that's how they did it, I still had part of it in me. And so that was what caused the bleeding.
Okay.
Whereas if you let it come naturally, you don't really have to worry about
Yeah.
that for the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah, that experience was extremely traumatic, but it also very common and normal for what women experience the first time they have a baby.
Yeah.
So second time around, I was determined to have a different experience. I knew what it could look like. And I think that was helpful because I figured, you know what, like this is the worst that can happen. I've already been through that. So anything else is going to be great, to be honest. And I got my baby and she was healthy. So that's all that matters. That's what you're told. That's all that matters. But it's not. Like there could have been things done. I could have been supported in a way where I felt more empowered to make decisions, and I wasn't. So I got a new midwife second time around. Before I even got pregnant, I really focused on nutrition because I wanted to make sure I was going to have a healthy and like intentional pregnancy so that I could do everything I could to avoid complications. So I worked for a naturopathic doctor for a few years in Doylestown, and I connected with her and my best friend who's a holistic nutritionist. And we got together and I said, what do I need to eat? What do I need to be doing to support my body so I don't need to take a prenatal? I want to make sure I'm getting all the vitamins and minerals I need in my diet. I was a vegan for a couple years, vegetarian for 7 years, and I started eating meat right before my first daughter, getting pregnant with her. And then second time around, I was eating like raw liver, raw milk, raw yolks, like all of the stuff,
Going super
seafood.
primal with it.
Yeah, super primal. Very much the opposite of what I was doing before. And so I started drinking bone broth, meat stock every day. And I was very intentional about the way I was eating, obsessive actually. And that was an issue for me, was just finding ease around it. Because although I was supporting myself physically, the stress around the eating and making sure I was getting enough kind of canceled it out.
Yeah.
I think that happens a lot in the wellness world is
Yeah.
people are trying to be healthy, and in their efforts to be healthy, their mental health tanks.
Yeah, you end up doing the most.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I ate this, and now all of this is canceled, and it's
macros and protein and carbs.
It's very it's just toxic, and I've been there. I've perpetuated it for many years, and I know better now, and it's just about ease. And so I was like in that mindset, gonna create the perfect environment for a baby. Got pregnant, had a miscarriage at around 9 weeks, and I was, of course, devastated. I'm like, oh, I did everything right. You know, like why did this happen? And of course I blamed myself. And I remember texting a friend who had experienced one, and I texted her and like, I kind of think this is happening. Can you tell me what happened to you? If you don't mind sharing that, like, so I know if this is happening. And she shared with me what happened to her, and I was like, that's exactly what's happening to me. And so having her throughout that experience was really nice. And, you know, Will was incredible, and I shared it. I shared about my experience online, and people came to me and told me about their experience, people who I was very close with, who I had no idea had been through it.
Yeah.
So many women have experienced pregnancy loss. And because I just decided to share about it, we connected on that level. And it made me feel not alone. And I think it's easy for people to say things that they think are helpful, but then can be very hurtful. Like, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
It's very common. And my friend who I was texting while everything was happening told me, people are going to say this. Don't let it discount what you're going through. They don't understand. They're just trying to help. People get weird around traumatic situations, and they don't know what to say. Yeah. So I kept that in mind, and it was really nice to have her. And then after that, I just stopped being so obsessive. And I had a glass of wine, and I went to the sauna, and, you know, I just like relaxed. And I got pregnant a couple months later. And I think letting go of the really intense need to be healthy during the pregnancy was very helpful. And that was just like overcoming disordered eating throughout my entire life. And so, yeah, I had Magnolia, another little girl. So I had Iris, who was 9 pounds, 5 ounces, and Magnolia was 10 pounds, 1 ounce.
Oof.
And she was the home birth.
Both
so
of them are big.
So I was 5 months pregnant, and we had this very interesting situation happen with where we lived. We lived in a townhome complex. I don't think I told you this before, but we had someone knock on our door at 4 a.m. And being a mom, you wake up, you're like, I think that was the door. And Will's like, no, I'll go back to sleep. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I just heard the doorbell ring. And so he goes downstairs butt naked, because that's Will, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, put some clothes on. Why are you getting the door? Don't get the door. And he like peeks out, and he's like, there's some young girl outside. So he comes up, changes, goes back down, and it's our next door neighbor who we've never met. She's 14, and she goes, I don't feel safe at home. Can I come into your house to use your phone to call the suicide hotline? Okay, I'm upstairs with Iris, who is probably like 2 years old. And I said, yeah, bring her in. Oh my gosh, bring her in. Are you kidding? So we call an ambulance. They come, they talk to her. They decide that she is fine. and she can stay at our house for a little bit. And so I'm like feeding her, I'm giving her clothes. I'm like, what do you need? And she kind of starts telling me her story. And there's a lot going on that I'm like, I've never met you. You've lived next door to me for a year and a half. Didn't even know you were in the house with the rest of the people who I've met. A lot of weird stuff. And I ended up taking her to the hospital around 7 a.m. to like the Behavioral Health Foundation's center in the hospital. And we got there, ended up learning that this was like a major case. They had been to the house many times, neglect, abuse, a lot of really intense stuff. So this is now me realizing what's happening next door, one wall over from my bedroom. The things that are happening to this person, around this person, and I'm just baffled. Like, I can't believe this is happening. What do we do? How do we help? Because the part of me is like, we have to help. We have to take her in.
Yeah.
Whoa, slow down. So I texted Meg, who worked at the time in that field, my sister-in-law, and I'm like, help me. What resources?
I love that Meg's name came up because I literally said we were going to mention her during the show, but I was joking, but I love that it came up.
My amazing sister-in-law.
Yeah, I love it.
So I was like, help, So she gave me some advice, and we got the girl the support that she needed, but I felt very uneasy at home. And the people next door often flaunted that they had like a lot of automatic weapons, which is like, hey, it's America, you're good. But there's severe mental health issues in your house, and there has been the intent to harm you or themselves. And hey, we share a wall.
Yeah.
So that just kept coming back like, okay, if this goes down, if anything were to go down, I'm not going to go into detail what I learned about this case, but there was major abuse and neglect going on. So I'm like, okay, somebody gets into this stash that you have and decides to end whatever's happening. And I'm on the other side of the wall, and my baby's on the other side of the wall, and my pregnant belly's on the other side of the wall, my husband, my dogs, like, no way.
Yeah.
So I'm freaking out. I'm in a state of fight or flight. I'm pregnant, and I'm stressed about being stressed.
Yeah.
And she came back asking to move in a couple nights later. We called the police because I was just like, this is not, I can't help.
Yeah.
And this is not our place. Like, this is beyond just being like a good neighbor. You need a cup of sugar? It was well beyond that.
Yeah. Now you're putting yourself in potentially harm's way.
Right. And what I saw was how messed up the system is in supporting people with mental health issues, because the parents needed support, she needed support, and essentially what they were told is that unless she basically succeeds in committing suicide or trying to literally kill you, you're not going to get any support.
Yeah.
And all the evidence is right there. All of these cases written up, constant times that the cops are showing up. And it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking to see. And I said, what is this? What's going to happen to her? She went into a facility. Who knows what kind of support she was getting. And it was just like heartbreaking. And this is all happening. Will at the time was working, he would go into work at like 4 a.m, get home at 6 or 7 at night. So I was home alone the entire time, freaked out about whatever was going on next door.
Yeah.
And I went to my parents and I was like, I don't think I can be there. I can't have a baby there. And my midwife was, get the hell out of there. You cannot be there. And so all of a sudden we're now trying to move unexpectedly, move into my parents' house over the next course of like the next few months, slowly moving out. And I was like, oh, by the way, can I have a home birth here? Is that cool? And them knowing that I was probably going to do it anyway, they were like, oh, I guess, sure. So I kept telling myself throughout this pregnancy, especially after that happened, like, this is a crazy pregnancy, but this birth is going to be beautiful. It's going to be everything I could ever dreamed of. It's going to be peaceful and amazing, and it's all going to be worth it. I'm just going to keep trusting. And these things kept happening where I would be challenged. Do I really trust yourself? Do I really trust yourself? And I kept, yes, 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 I know. And I didn't read any books. I didn't listen to any podcasts. I'm like, listen, I'm just going to show up and we're just going to go with the flow. And so went into labor naturally, almost about a week late. And I remember my midwife, I got a new midwife, and she's like, I'm not going to induce you. You're going to have this baby She was the one, she said, no one's ever been pregnant forever. The baby's going to come. And so all around, I just felt so much more supported by her. And when I told her about my experience with the first birth, she said, here's what I would have done. And hearing that, of course, I thought, wow, I wish I would have had you. But at the same time, I knew I was in the right hands this time around. And so I went into labor and, you know, at home, actually, naturally, without any sort of induction. And it was so much fun, which is like weird to say, but it was so cool because being able to feel everything and know a little bit about what happened the first time around, I said, oh, okay. Understanding the physiology of birth is very empowering because the places where you would typically have fear around what's happening in my body, I understand, oh, well, this is what's happening now. It's getting more intense because I'm approaching transition or this stage.
So you just knew you were having a better experience in the moment.
Right. Yeah. And I was, you know, you're not in your head, but having a little bit of understanding of the physiology of birth takes away a lot of the fear because you're like, oh, the sensation shifts because this is what's happening. And so it was just this delicate dance of me working and riding through the contractions and the different waves and then letting the baby do what she had to do to make her way down. And the midwives are amazing. I said, I want you to be there, but I don't want to know that you're there unless I need you. And that's exactly what they did. I had a doula this time, another doula, and she was amazing. She was so incredible. I met her on Instagram. She wasn't even practicing being a doula at the time. And then I put something out there that I was looking for one, and she came over. We talked for 3 hours and just vibed. I was like, I want you to be when I'm in the most vulnerable state of my life. Yeah. I want you there.
Better than a room full of doctors and nurses you don't know, right? That's how it is for me.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And just being surrounded by women. Yeah. That was the most amazing part.
A bunch of love in them.
And they were all mothers too, so they've been through it.
Yeah.
And Will and him being there, and that was just amazing. And Iris was downstairs with Mary, my mother-in-law, and my mom. And
it sounds way better. It was the way you describe it sounds way better, but it still sounds scary as hell.
Okay, so you're gonna have fear because you are about to go into the realm, the portal between worlds, right? You're going into this realm to pull a being out of the unborn into the world.
Yeah.
Can we just take a moment to understand that is what women are doing every second? It's wild.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I'm the same way with it. It still baffles me.
I know.
That you can create a human.
I know.
You can create a life. All these people running around, the women, you made them?
When I witnessed my sister give birth, I remember the first time I was like, I'm sorry. That's what can we just shout this from the world? How are we not?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I just remember being like, why are we not talking about this more?
Yeah.
And, in a way, when you are disempowered in birth and we put our hands in the control of people, it's a business. It's a business. The Business of Birth is actually a great documentary to watch. But it's a business. And so when you take the power back in your birth, you become unstoppable. And I think that scares a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I was never at the point where I thought to myself, if anything happens, I'm not going to the hospital. I love Western medicine. If I need it, I'm going to use it. But I also put so much intention into creating a lifestyle where it's holistic and a lot of it is preventative so that if I do need that, it actually works. And so labor was making its way through and baby was coming down. I was in the tub a little bit, but I didn't really like being in the water. I wanted to move. I felt like I needed to move, and which helps. When you're standing up and squatting, that gravity is going to help you move instead of being on your back with your legs up in the air. It's just, makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yet that's how many women birth, and then they run into a complication and ended up doing an emergency cesarean when a lot of it could be prevented.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other podcast we'll have to do sometime. So started getting to the point of transition where she was getting really close to being born. And Will told me I just kept going like this. He's like, you were summoning spirits from the underworld. You were in another dimension, which you are. you're just groaning and you're just getting guttural and primal. And I just felt so excited the whole time because I was doing it. And so I felt the ring of fire, which is when their head comes to the point when you're stretched at the most point. And I remember saying, like, it's the ring of fire. I was so excited.
You're excited about it.
You're like, she's so weird. But I felt it, and that to me was exciting because the other time I didn't. So I think I just had like a unique perspective on it. And so got the head out, and then my midwife said, step your leg up into a lunge and stop pushing. And in my mind, I actually knew that that was the position for shoulder dystocia, which is when their shoulder gets stuck. That's a position that this amazing midwife, Ina Mae Gaskin, helped women at home births to get the baby out, because typically in the hospital they have a few maneuvers, or you like get an emergency C-section. You have a very limited amount of time to help your baby if they get stuck. Terrible things can happen. So I felt calm. My midwife was super chill about it. She's like, step your right foot up and lunge, stop pushing, just breathe. She said, I'm going to stick my fingers in, unhook baby's shoulder from your pelvis, and then I'll let you know when to push. It was very quick. I didn't even notice her doing that. And then she said, okay, you're ready to push. She came right out. Now, she didn't cry right away, which I wasn't scared because I knew that she was connected to the umbilical cord. So she was still getting plenty of oxygenated blood. Now in a hospital, they cut the cord immediately. So all of that oxygenated blood, iron-rich oxygenated blood that's going to your baby is now not going to your baby. So she was still connected to the cord. She wasn't like lifeless, you know. And Will kept asking me, is it a boy or is it a girl? And to me, I said, just wait. I need to wait until this baby is breathing before I find out what it is. And, you know, they're moving a little bit. And she said, my midwife said, just tell her she's here, you know, like pat her on the butt, you know, rub her back, tell her she's here. She did it, you know, like talk to your baby, talk to your baby. And she started pinking up and literally opened her eyes. And my midwife said, she's good, you know, she's good. We kept her attached to the cord probably for, until I birthed the placenta. So she got all of that oxygen-rich blood, especially was more important now because of what she had gone through with the shoulder dystocia.
So can I ask you a question? She's breathing through her mouth now?
Now that she's
breathing
born.
Through her nose, they breathe through her nose in the beginning. Breathe through her nose, and she's still connected?
She was still connected, getting all of that oxygen-rich blood, which is important because when the babies aren't crying at first, they're needing that oxygen. And so her being connected to that cord, she's still getting the oxygenated blood, which is what she needs. So I didn't really feel that scared. My midwife held space so well, and she was calm, and so I felt calm. And at that point, I was like, if I have to go to the hospital now, I don't care. That's fine. So because shoulder dystocia, you have a higher risk of hemorrhaging, the mom. And so she came out. I realized she was a girl. I said, it's a girl, and, you know, we're crying, and it was beautiful. And she opened her eyes, and she looked at me, and she was great. 10 pounds, 1 ounce. She was a big baby, healthy baby girl. And Iris came up and met her, and it was just incredible. And so then I felt like I was getting ready to birth the placenta. So I was like, let's get Iris out of here. She does not need to see this. And, you know, they say, I know it feels scary that you have to push again, but like there's no bones in this. It's just going to come out. So that happened, and my midwife was like, damn, that is the biggest placenta I have ever seen.
The baby is like 3 feet tall.
Yeah, she's like, that's why your iron was low, you know, like look at this thing. And it's the tree of life. It's the most incredible thing to witness. But before that, I was passing like large clots. So they had to give me, they gave me something like an oral thing. And I think they did give me a shot of Pitocin and something to help the bleeding. And like we started nursing right away. And we just did some things to support me. And again, at that point, I'm like, if I have to, I don't care, I have to go to the hospital. Like, that's fine. I did it. And I was fine. And she knew how I was with staying hydrated. She's like, I know you're going to drink your broth. You're going to drink a placenta smoothie because you're a freak. She didn't say that because she totally condones that. But
you did it?
I did. I'm used to eating raw liver, Sean, in a smoothie. I'm like, it's the same thing.
I probably would do it too. I didn't, but I would do it. I don't have any problem.
I mean, I was like, to me, it's the same thing as raw liver. It's, you know, and you like freeze it, so you don't even know. I only did it for the first 3 days. It's very strong and like yang energy. So beyond that, you don't really want to take it because you need to really rest postpartum. But yeah, so I'm sitting there and Will's just like, you did it. He was like, you fucking did it. Oh my God. And, you know, you're still in shock. And And I'm just staring at her like I just had her on the bathroom floor. Like I got on all fours, and that's how I pushed my baby out, like how we're supposed to, you know?
Yeah.
And it was the most incredible feeling. And the best feeling of all was getting into my bed about 35 minutes later.
Yeah.
Into my bed. My doula came up with my, I had broth and I had soup and a smoothie, and I just got into my bed, and then, the oxytocin's flowing. So you're like, let's chill, like, let's go. Why are you guys all leaving? Like, let's hang out. Like, you need to go to sleep, girl. You need to rest.
How long did you end up sleeping for?
What?
How long did you end up sleeping for? Do you recall?
I slept pretty well. So Maggie actually slept a lot in the beginning during the night. And I remember asking my midwife if something was wrong because I was not used to that with Iris. And she said, no, like this is a home birth baby. They kept calling her like she's a home birth baby. She's going to be a little bit more chill. Not so much now that she's 1.5. But, so I actually slept great in the beginning, and that was really nice. And then after that, takes so much time to actually process what happened. But I remember just feeling like, wow, things aren't hard because I just did that. Yeah. And like whenever something feels hard, I can remember being in that moment and I forget, I'm like, oh, laundry. I'm like, wait. Okay.
Yeah, you were able to overcome life's biggest challenge, delivering, life into the world.
But here's the thing, Sean, is it was easier than having the medicine to make me numb.
Yeah.
Which to me intuitively didn't make sense, but then it did because I was feeling the shifts in my body, and by the time I would start to maybe hyper focus on a sensation, it would change. And so it was really cool to just witness this dance of like she would kind of move down, and then I would, do my thing and she would do her thing, and then we just worked together.
Yeah.
And she was born into red light, and super chill music. Yeah. It just started snowing outside. It was just
a whole different vibe. Yeah.
Totally different.
It does sound a lot better.
It was literally it was fun. Yeah. And Will was like, you were screaming. I said, no, but
it looked like you were having
fun. It was like a fun scream, No.
Yeah, no, it sounds amazing. Because you experienced something that few people will ever experience.
I think more than not, it's becoming more common. And I think that there's so many amazing birth workers out there that are educating women. One of the great things about social media is that you can learn a lot from people. You can hear women's stories. I think that's the best birth prep you can do is learn women's stories and just read stories,
Yeah.
And tell your story, because there's a lot of power in working through maybe trauma around birth and the normalized birth, which totally takes a lot of the power out of it. And what's possible is something that really is beautiful and changes the trajectory of your entire life when you experience that. And that doesn't discount my first experience. What I did was still amazing and still incredible. And any woman who does it, whether you have a C-section, whether you're knocked out and you wake up and there's a baby, whatever path you took to get there is unbelievable. Yeah. It's so baffling.
Yeah. And everyone's path is going to be different.
Exactly. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think the more that we can learn and empower ourselves to realize that there is another option.
Yeah.
And it's not for everyone, but it's not as scary as people may make it out to be.
Yeah. I think it's important that people share, because like all things, you don't know what you don't know. And let me state here, I don't want to speak for women or mothers. I'm just going to make an assumption that I think, based on my situation with my wife, I think there was just a lot of fear around what you hear about giving birth. Yeah. So they're like, just give me the medicine. I don't want to feel anything, this, that. Like, just take it all away and just help me with this, because they don't know that the other way might not be as bad as you think it is.
And that's what you're told too.
Yeah.
You just hear people's horror stories.
Yeah.
No, and when I say it's good to hear stories, some of them, yes. Some of them, hey, if you're going to tell me a horror story, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
This is the time where it's okay to be like, only love and light, okay?
Yeah.
Only in this time, I don't want to hear any of the negative stuff right now. That's okay. It's okay to be aware of what could happen, but just, you don't need that. And because that's what happens, right? We're put into this state of fear. We have enough fear as a mom. When you become a mom, it's scary as hell. You don't have enough fear being pregnant anyway. And I just wonder what it would be like if we put as much education and time and energy into supporting women into doing birth the way that we did it not that long ago.
Yeah.
before it became a very thriving business, and when it was mostly in the hands of women delivering babies.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to unpack around that. But I think what I see is it's happening.
Yeah.
And women are learning and encouraging each other and holding space for each other to maybe do something that they didn't expect.
Yeah, it's interesting that those stories, they seem like they're buried, or you have to go searching for it, I would assume, if you really want to know about it. Because like, you're right, when you think about, or at least when I think about giving birth, I'm sure most people, you just think about hospital. Like that's the first thing
Oh,
that
yeah.
most people think of.
When I told people I was doing a home birth, they're like, "Why? Why?" By the end, I thought it was funny because I
Yeah.
was just like, "I'm just gonna trigger this person
Yeah.
because they are so scared because of what they knew, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's not their fault. It's just what we're used to."
Yeah.
And
there's risk either way. You know, like
Totally.
either way, whether you're there or at home, you can't avoid the risk.
No, yeah. And I think that's why in my mind I was like, if my midwife is like, "Girl, we need to go to the hospital," I'm gonna go to the hospital.
Yeah.
I know there are people out there that are like, "I'm not, I can do it." It's like, okay, but maybe like just hold. There's a situation, it could go this way, it could go this way. Just show up and go with whatever you need to do. So it can go either way, but being able to have the option and supportive team behind you is everything. I saw this, a friend of mine posted yesterday, choose your birth team the way you would choose your bridesmaids or something, and how much effort people put into like their wedding and their bridal party and all of that. And then for birth, it's all about like, make sure you have the perfect stroller, make sure you have, this really cute crib and like this aesthetically pleasing nursery. What we're not talking about is that, okay, the most important thing that comes after you have the baby is supporting the mother. The postpartum period is the fourth trimester, the most important part. It's when typically in other cultures or in the past around here, everybody comes together to take care of the mama so that all she has to do is worry about feeding the baby. They feed her, they do the laundry, they do all the stuff. She rests because she has a wound the size of a dinner plate that needs to heal. We can't see it though. So we're like, fine, I'm just going to go for a jog next week, get back into my pre-baby bod, which doesn't exist, and that's a good thing. But I see so many women that like hop right back into it. And in other cultures, there's this like 40-day period or a longer period where you rest. Now, obviously, we're not gonna be able to stay in bed for 40 days, but they say like 5 days in bed, 5 days on the bed, 5 days near the bed. And that's like a kind of a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, rest is important.
Yeah, because once you get up, you are not going to be resting for the next 20 years of your life, probably.
Rest is over.
Yeah, that's done. And so I think that we really need to value that for moms, because you might not realize it immediately, but a lot of my friends who are in like this postpartum support kind of clinical and practitioner realm is, you might not realize it then, but when you hit menopause, your hormones, all of that, ignoring what you needed immediately postpartum, they say how you treat your body the first 40 days after you give birth will set your body up for the next 40 years. And, sometimes I see people, they have a baby and like 3 days later, they're like out at a brewery with the stroller, like excited to have that beer or whatever, which is fine, but I'm like, get in bed. Have someone bring you a beer in bed. Like, just get in bed, like rest, please. Oh my gosh. And then, we're working out because society has this obsession with looking a certain way and showing up to like, wow, you look so good. And you're valued based on the way that you look. And, you're like, thanks, yeah. And I feel absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Because I am putting everybody else's needs before myself. So I think that there's so much work that needs to be done around supporting moms postpartum. Like, yeah, you need the stroller and the crib, but really what you need is a team. You need a freezer full of food that people can easily heat up for you. You need people to come check on you, not to come hold the baby because you want to hold the baby. The baby wants you, but to act like, hey, what do you need? I'm going to do your dishes. I'm going to walk your dogs.
Yeah.
I'm just going to listen to you tell your birth story when you're ready. Setting those boundaries too, like having the boundaries, like I'm not ready for anybody to come yet. That's really, really hard.
Boundaries are huge. Especially with, people closest to you sometimes.
Totally,
Like those are the ones
yeah.
you have to really set boundaries
It is.
with.
It's
It's like
always,
they're
yeah.
all loving the baby and everyone wants to. I'm like,
Right,
stop.
listen.
We're not kissing babies on
Right.
lips. Like we're not doing that.
Yeah. And it's like you have this baby for the rest of your life, okay? Let us have a little bit of time, just us, as we
Yeah.
figure this out. And that's one of the hardest parts postpartum is speaking your truth, learning how to speak your truth postpartum and get in that mama bear energy. Like, we'll let you know when we're ready for visitors.
Yeah.
Or you can have your husband, you could be like, listen,
That's me.
yeah, like I
I'm
got
stepping,
this.
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
stepping
you'll
right
deal
in
with the
there.
text, a note on the door. We're not accepting
Yeah.
visitors. I had a great friend who was like, I'm gonna drop the meal at your door. I'll text you when it's there.
Yeah.
She didn't come in. Hi, can I help it be? You know, she's like, I'm leaving the meal at the door. You're good. But yeah, kissing the baby, like especially my babies were born in the winter, and I'm like, get away from me,
Yeah,
RSV,
yeah.
like come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot. I think that women deal with this intense hormonal drop right after you have the baby, but then it's because we don't have this support, and then you feel guilty for either giving in to what you don't want to do, or you feel guilty for expressing your needs and it's not received well.
Yeah.
And then you struggle mentally beyond like what just happened to my body. I'm shattered into a million pieces and I'm a whole new person and I don't know who I am. And I have to keep this little being alive. And I'm trying to figure out how to communicate with my partner who I love, but I like don't have the mental capacity to be nice and be like, hey, can you go get me something? Like, I need this. No, you know, like where, you know?
Yeah.
So there's so much to navigate, and the more support that we can gather around women and just checking in. Maybe it's as simple as checking in, like, are you doing okay? If you're not, I'm here. Okay. If you want to talk, you know, to a woman who's been through this, it's hard to communicate with your partner sometimes and it's not your fault, but you can't understand
Yeah.
what it's like.
Yeah, you may not even know what you do.
No,
Yeah.
right. And it's hard for you too, and that's why you need support as well from other dads. Like how do I support my partner? Now I'm going from being the number one person in her life to not anymore. And that's really hard for you. Like
Yeah.
that's intense. And it's hard to communicate. And I remember Will and I, the one reason we started teaching the Sacred Pleasure workshops was because we realized after 2 kids, we had to totally reinvent the way that we communicated with each other. We had to start over from scratch because the way in which we communicated was completely different. Now it wasn't like, hey, what do you want to go do? What's for dinner? It was, I need this and I need this and I need you to do this. And I see you doing this and I appreciate you doing all of this and I need you to do more. And like, it's
I'm gonna need some tips there. I think I probably should have showed up to that workshop. When you sent me the invite to that, I was like, I probably can't make it, but I probably need to make it.
don't we all?
I
No,
probably
it's
should go to
scary.
this.
People hear the word pleasure and they're like, what are we doing in this
Yeah,
workshop?
it's just like a leave the keys in the bowl kind of
Yeah,
thing. You're like, what are we doing here?
We like to scare people when they get there. We're like, all right, guys, are you ready for this? They're like, no.
Yeah.
No, it's really just like learning how to communicate after children and,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah.
That part that you described there about becoming number 2 too. I actually like that. Like I enjoyed that transition because like I don't want to be the focus. Like the baby, you know, the baby's here.
Right.
The baby, like
It's natural.
please get all the attention. I was cool with it. I didn't have any problem with it. I still don't mind it. Like
Yeah.
focus all your energy on the baby. I'm good. I got this for
Right.
her. Like I'm okay. I'll be all right.
Right.
We'll figure it out. And even when things aren't what they were in the beginning, like, you know, as long as we both care, we're gonna get back to it.
Yeah. As long as you're a team and keep coming back and, you know, kind of just checking in with each other and being like, are you okay? What's going on? How are you feeling? I really feel like you need to check in a lot with your partner because it's so easy to just be in the same space, living together and, you know, starting to resent someone if you're not communicating your needs. Like that was a big part of the workshop was how to effectively communicate, which every couple I feel like needs,
Yeah,
right?
we all need it.
Because most of us didn't learn how to do that. And we're still learning how to do that. That's why I'm grateful that you do this because people are actually learning how to communicate.
Yeah, I'm grateful for you showing up. You've been carrying the show today. I don't you got to do anything. Thank you so much. You made a lot of good points in the things that I experienced during my journey too. Advocating for yourself, very important in the hospital. Like I had some situations where I probably could have, and there's just so much going on that you don't, and like you said afterwards, sometimes you feel a little bad for not doing it, but you know, we always have better answers in hindsight, you know, so it's just like, all right, made it and deal with it. Then that other thing that you described when you were person living next to you that had weapons, you made the right call. And I'm just going to tell you, I had a story where there was, let me figure out how to say this without like doing too much. Someone I know lived next door to a place where someone had shot through the wall. So, it can happen.
Oh.
And you just wouldn't expect that, but it does happen for sure. And had someone been there, someone would have been dead for
I
sure.
wonder if we're thinking about the same person. I might know somebody else
Maybe,
too. I think we might be. Anyway,
we could be, but
yeah,
so I was
we'll
like,
have to
how do I frame
off
this
camera.
without
We'll
telling
chat.
people? Yeah.
And that was
So
how I
good for
felt.
you.
I'm like, even if it's a 0.0001%,
No risk.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's not worth
Yeah,
it.
we're not taking any chance.
Right, and we have families that can hold us, and it was fine. So yeah.
Yeah, we never take chances with our lives.
I mean, we're lucky enough to be able to get out of that situation.
Yeah.
Some people can't, which is terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. You just described it like I feel like a harrowing journey. I feel like I had a little angst just listening to it. It just sounds like so much. The fact that you went through it the first time and it went how it went, and then just to dive right in the second time, I feel like only the power of women can do that kind of thing. Like I feel like women are like the most powerful beings. They are, just like it's not just a feeling. It just is what it is.
You're a smart man, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, like we know people from your family. I don't want to. I try not to throw names out, but gave someone a piece of their body without medicines. Like,
right.
Wait, what?
I know.
You gave an organ to someone and you did it without medication?
Tune into another episode
for
that.
Yeah, are you kidding me? So it's like,
yeah,
you hear all these stories. It's like, men are great too. I love cool, but there's nothing like a woman. Well, the love of a woman, even like the voice of a woman, I feel like that's different. Like there's something in a voice that can like just lift you.
I think that there is a shift that's happening in this like idea of what modern feminism is. A lot of it was about women being the super woman, right? Taking care of the kids, working full-time job, being a career woman, showing up in all the ways, doing all of the things. And I think it did a major disservice because then it's like, okay, well then you're creating a world that's like, what do you need men for? And we need them.
Yeah.
And, for a decent amount of years, I think still even somewhat, it's like there's this idea that modern day feminism takes that role of like, well, you're not saving space for the men. And, certain type of men have had, there's been some issues over the past few years, always, but that have come to light. And I think that there's some people doing really incredible work around stepping into your role in the masculine, stepping into your role in the feminine, and how they complement each other beautifully. And how, like, women are this expansive, flowing energy, and men are the container. Like, the masculine is the container that holds that safe space for them to be, to flow, to have their ideas, to birth, to go through these different stages. And, like, the masculine energy holds that space, that strength, that support, so that they can do that. And I think the more that we can understand those roles, the easier it gets to embody them and have healthier relationships, and like just the energy of the collective consciousness feels like it's more balanced, right? The balance of the masculine, the feminine, the yin, the yang. So yeah, women are incredible, but so are men. And I think we need that balance of both, because someone's going to get burnt out and depleted.
Yeah.
Along the way.
And you have to carve space for both, because when you don't, there's going to be resentment. You get that from a lot of men when they start to feel that, and women too, I'm sure, from both sexes. When you start to feel that push from the other side, you're like, all right, you feel like you don't need us. You just start to feel a certain way about it. I personally don't really dive too deep into that. I just worry about what's going on in my house. That's a bigger, larger picture.
Of what's happening in the world, though. It's...
I guess so. I don't know. You'd have to ask my wife. I feel like my house goes so.
Let's get her in.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not get her in. I feel like my house goes so smooth. It's just because I don't know. I just try to be considerate and like you said, create space and just not suck up all the energy in the room, even when there could be a situation that I don't even necessarily love, but it's okay.
You're a team.
Yeah.
And you work through it.
Yeah.
And
yeah, absolutely.
You're not going to bounce just because it gets hard.
Yeah, yeah, and that's never gonna happen, you know. So as long as you understand that, it's like, okay, we're gonna fight through it, fight through life. Like we're all here fighting,
Yeah.
just to live.
Yeah.
So that was a that was an amazing story you just told. I don't even know if I intended on even asking you that, but it just came out randomly. Thank you for sharing it. Did I describe you what you do? Well, I said holistic health coach.
Yeah,
Is that-
integrative wellness, holistic health is all the same.
Okay.
Educator. I essentially help women embody the full spectrum of their emotions so that they can effortlessly show up in their life, in motherhood, in their relationships, and in their work with more ease. And, you know, when I tell people that I'm like, oh, I help you, like, people feel their feelings, sometimes they're like, oh, I need you. And other times they're like, huh? What do you mean, feel your feelings? What? That's so weird.
Yeah, that is interesting, right? Like, you know, like we said, space for everyone, but the not feeling your feelings part, I don't really understand it because if you don't, like, are you just gonna hide forever? Like, I just can't imagine not fully developing into who I'm meant to be forever. You know, like, am I gonna die like that? You know what I mean?
Have you always been good at feeling your feelings?
No.
When did you like learn about it?
I don't know. I just think at some point where you start to realize like who I was is probably, it's like creating a certain vibe, you know, or energy around me where it's like probably a little negative, you know, probably a little negative, you know. I think because a lot of what I was carrying was anger, you know, so like a lot of the things that I'm doing out in the world is based on anger. Then once I realized it was that, I was like, okay, let me address that emotion. And then once you get rid of that, it's like, okay, I'm flowing, I'm flowing through life now because that's not all of who I am. Go ahead.
No, I want to talk about anger. I don't mean to be like,
No, you're
I'm
good.
excited.
Good. I'd rather you jump in.
So, like, when you feel like you learned how to deal with it, like, what did that look like?
Well, first it was obviously like the awareness, just recognizing that it exists. And all the emotions, I would say, anger, they all have their place, right? Like, so I don't completely let go of it, but it no longer serves me now, but I can access it, you know, like I can still access it. So that part, but a lot of it was from a question you asked me last time you were here. You asked me something about how did having a son change me? And I don't think I answered you, but I think it was just realizing that he was me, you know? So, you know, if he's me and I'm angry, I'm gonna like project that into him. So a lot of those kind of things helped me get to it. But a lot of it was a little bit earlier, and he only came just a couple years ago. So, you know, it sounds like I was like an extremely angry person then, but I was carrying a lot of it for sure, you know?
Yeah, and I'm sure all of it was valid too.
Yeah.
And I love that you said you didn't get rid of it because I was afraid, because I think sometimes people will be like, yeah, I don't have anger anymore.
Yeah, no.
I'm just super chill. Like people thought that for a long time because I taught yoga and meditation and mindfulness. They're like, oh, you must be so chill.
Yeah.
You must be such a chill mom and never get like.
It don't work like that.
No. You know, that doesn't mean you don't have emotions. You know, I think a lot of us are taught to bury them deep because most of the time we're not taught by our parents or society in general of like how to feel your anger.
Yeah.
And whenever I forget, I just look at my 4-year-old or my 1-year-old. She knows how.
Yeah.
Damn. Here I am trying to tell her to stop, but really I need to be like taking notes.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, is that okay? That's how you do it. Okay, maybe we don't hit.
Yeah, we just learn how to express them.
Right? How do we navigate it? How do we, like you said, the awareness of the fact that anger exists. It's valuable just as much as your joy, which is like a great segue because rage has been like the thing we've been talking about a lot lately. And I'm teaching a rage workshop next month.
Yeah.
And people are like, what's rage? I had this woman reach out. She's like, what is, like, do we all have that? And
I do.
right. And that's okay. Like we all have it.
I
You
do.
might just, it might just be really down deep,
Yeah.
you know, buried and suppressed based on how you saw people express their rage or not express their rage. And as a man or a woman, like it has its place and it can be amazing and activating if we know how to allow it to exist and hold space for it and let it transform into something that is very powerful. Like that fiery element. Fire can destroy, or it can ignite something incredible.
Yeah.
And so I think holding space for the anger and the rage is essential, especially when we're raising children. And, you know, you think about what activates you, like what about your kids stress you out? What behavior are they showing that you, I can't handle this anymore? Or like when do you lose it?
Yeah.
And I saw something the other day about like the age that your child triggers you a lot is likely the age that you were not supported in the way that you needed to be.
Yeah.
So I've been doing a lot of work around four-year-old me, because I have my 4.5-year-old, and I did this shadow work session on Friday actually with this amazing woman, Amber Gordon, and she like took me to this memory when I was 4, where I felt very alone and like abandoned, and essentially took me with a guide, like this crone version of myself. We went and got her from this memory and like brought her to the now and the support I have now. And she would talk you through and say, you know, what would you have needed in that moment? Who would you have needed? And I just started crying because I said, it's everything I've created now in my life. The friendships, the relationships, you know, my husband, my girls, like what I'm creating for my girls, my mother-in-law, who's like, you know her, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, Will and I were saying this, like not many people are like, I love my mother-in-law, she's the greatest.
Yeah.
And I am so lucky to have that with my husband's entire family, and you know them very well, so you get it. But understanding like the age, how old is Carter?
2.
Okay.
Sorry, it took me so long.
No, yeah, 2. So yeah, so it's like, whew, yeah, they're starting to push those boundaries, express, but they don't have the emotional capacity to tell you how they're feeling, so they just feel it. Like Iris is 4.5, so the part of her brain that regulates her emotions is just starting to form, just starting. So we look at them and they're like, God, why are they so upset? Or how can we help them? And I know people in their 60s who don't know how to regulate their emotions. So how am I expecting her to know how? I'm still figuring it out at 33.
Yeah. Lucky for me, I was such a maniac at a young age. Like when I see him, I'm like,
You're
there's
like,
no way. Yeah.
That's how Will is.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, you know.
Yeah, there's no way that I'm gonna expect him to be that when I was like 27, still, you know, acting erratically.
Right,
So,
right. And our parents repress it.
Yeah.
Like I remember talking to Meg, my sister-in-law, because our youngest, my oldest and her youngest are the same age. So we'll text and be like, how you doing, girl? You hanging in there? You know, full moon or like whatever it is, toddler life, whatever is going on. And I'll say, you know, everybody keeps telling me like, I don't remember them being like this. And she'll be like, hold up. I remember Will being like that. He was crazy. You know, he had his moments, and you're like, oh, okay.
He was
Like you just
small.
forgot about that, Mom, because you got that memory out of your mind because it was intense. And it is, it's so hard. And if you don't have the tools to regulate your own emotions, how are you going to do that for this little being who's just looking at you like, I don't know. Like my daughter's even said, I don't know how I feel. And that's okay. You know, and just, I feel like when she's in the middle of having a really dysregulated moment, we used to try to use logic and be like, listen, blah, 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 blah. And in that moment, she just needed to be held. She might not want to be touched, but sometimes I'll just, and trust me, this is not happening all the time, but when I can really focus on co-regulating with her and I can sit in this space and just say, Mommy's just going to sit here and just try to take a couple breaths. I'm here if you need me. Do your thing. If you're going to scream for another 20 minutes and bang on the wall, that's fine. I'm going to focus on what I can control right now, because we cannot control another person as hard as we try. There's a great book about that called The Objectivist Parenting Book by Rosalind Ross, who talks about like trying to control other people, especially kids, and
It doesn't work.
Don't.
Yeah.
Just do what you can to co-regulate.
Yeah, literally like mind your own business in the nicest way possible.
Yeah, let them be kids. Let them be feral. Let them be wild and naked and, you know, kooky. And my friend and I were literally texting about this last night. Like, just let them be kids. We try to make them like us as adults, and we take away the most beautiful part of being children. And what we should be doing is what they're doing. Like, learn from them. Like, get on their level. This morning, Maggie was down talking to ants, And I'm like, let me get down here with you. Like, what does
Yeah.
the world look
Take
like
it back to
from
when
this
you were a kid.
perspective? Oh, it's wow, this is great. I'm always like, oh, hurry up, let's go. What's taking so long? Oh, they're just staring at a bird or they're like looking at a tree. Okay, maybe I should be the one to slow the hell down
Yeah.
and do what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Just relax. You
You know?
just be present in the moment and focus on ants.
Yeah.
I was thinking something that I figured out during the process. Like, I just recall being a child and remembering a lot of the negative things people said to me. And it wasn't like, I don't think it was intentionally negative. Like, I'll give you an example. Someone saying, I'm good at sports, always been good at sports. So usually I'm better than the people around me. So a lot of people try to stomp that out. Like, don't brag, don't do this, don't do that. And I think at some point, like, I just carried that. So then I just start being quiet or being small because these people are like making me small. So now when I see this, like, I'm not going to stomp that out in my kid. I would never do that. So I want to lift him. So any of the things that I thought in me were negative that I know are going to be in him, like, I only plan to empower him. All that other stuff that people did or do, it doesn't make any sense because you're literally like putting them into this box.
And in order for you to hold that space for him, though, like you have to do work
Yeah.
around what your experience was. And
Yeah.
some people don't even know, they don't have the awareness around it, which isn't necessarily their fault, or they just don't have like the support of other people around them to be able to do that. So that, that's amazing that you've done that
Yeah.
for
Support.
yourself, for him, and
Trying.
it's important.
Yeah. Support is
The
the
kids
biggest
know.
thing.
They get it. They're like closest to source. I told you a little bit about that ceremony I did.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
a
No.
little bit.
The ceremony, amazing.
Yeah.
Did you? I sent you a thing about. No, you probably didn't get
It's
it.
probably my old number.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I have a new phone number. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't even have your name in that
Oh,
thing.
okay.
That's okay.
We'll fix that. But yeah, so a couple I guess it was the beginning of May, I did my first ever like plant ceremony with Indigenous elders, and my best friend's husband had done it. It's San Pedro, Wachuma, and I've never had any interest in doing anything like that. He's like, this could be really cool experience for you and my wife, and who's my best friend, and I think you should do it. Like, go have a mom's night away from the kids to go do this. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. And I remember hearing his experience. I'm like, that sounds cool. But what I've heard from people who've gone through experiences with plant medicine, whether it's ayahuasca, mushrooms, like whatever, I'm like, okay, I've had those experiences from meditation and yoga. And I don't feel like I need that to take me there.
Yeah.
There's plenty of paths to get there. That's fine.
Because you're doing the work in other ways.
But I never just felt interested in it. And I also hate when my perception's off. Like, even after a glass of wine, I don't like feeling not in control.
Yeah, same. Same.
Which is a whole other issue.
Yeah, same. I'm the same way.
So I was just like, I don't know. And my best friend she's like, hey, so the guys are talking because our husbands work together. And they're like, they're telling us that the other one is like wanting to do it. And we're like, did you agree to this? And she's like, no, did you? I'm like, no. And then we're thinking, should we maybe do this? And so I go to my friend who I ask all of these questions. She's done all of that. And
yeah, she's indulged.
Yeah, she is amazing. You know her, actually.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, tell me about San Pedro. And she said, it's very interesting that you're saying this, because she said, I had like this vision or something of this plant medicine coming into your life to support you right now, to help you get to where you want to go. And she said, and I thought it was coming up for me. And she's like, now I'm realizing it's for you. And she said, it's the very, very gentle plant medicine. It's nothing like ayahuasca where you're often purging and all of this stuff. You might, but it's much more gentle. It's like the grandfather energy. And she's like, don't read about it. Just like, just show up.
Yeah.
And I feel like that works for me.
Smart.
Like, because if I start to learn everything about it, I get hyper focused.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm just going to show up. And so we had a Zoom call with the people who host it. And so many fears came up, and they immediately, like, even just meeting them over Zoom, I felt so at ease. And Erica, my friend, and I after were just like, oh my gosh, are you ready for this? I'm so excited now. And so we showed up. It was the first night either of us were away from our children. So 4.5 years
Yeah. So
being a mother, I've never been away. I've had opportunities, but they just never felt worth it.
yeah.
And so we show up, and you show up at like 1 o'clock. You fast for a couple of hours, or you have your last meal at 1 o'clock. You get there around 4 o'clock. You start the ceremony around 6:37, and it goes until 7 a.m. the next morning. So we get there, and we just keep talking. I'm like, how am I not going to eat for this long? How am I not going to eat for that many hours?
Yeah.
And how am I supposed to stay up all night? We're exhausted. Like, I don't understand how this is going to happen. But I show up, we go, I'm walking down into the woods, and all I keep thinking are ticks, poison ivy, all the fears. I'm like, why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. Why did I pay to do this? Why am I spending a night away from my warm bed with my children and my husband to do this? Like, what the hell? Just keep trusting, just keep showing up. And all these things kind of along the way, like I just see these little signs that felt like you're in the right place. Just keep going. So you build a fire with the group. I think it was about 22 people in total. You build a fire together, and everybody sits in a circle, and they have a person who is like the door, the space holder. So if you need to go out to go to the bathroom or whatever, you go out that one way. And so they pass away the San Pedro, which is essentially like a thick, cold, brothy broth like made from cactus. And I drink weird stuff all the time. So I was like, this is good. I don't see the problem here. And everybody's, having their lemon and everything. And we drink it. And before I felt so hungry, and I was so nervous about that. And as soon as I drank it, I immediately just felt completely satiated. And I just kind of relaxed. And within 15 minutes, I see this guy start purging.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, is that about to happen? He's like 10 minutes ahead of me. Yeah, oh God. And we just look at each other, we're like, oh shit. And
can I ask you a question real quick? Yeah. Purge, is it like a gentle, or is it like a violent purge? Or?
There's a spectrum. Some people, I don't know how purging can be gentle, to be honest.
When you throw up, you're like, you feel like the stomach's like blowing inside out.
Yeah. This one person was purging for like
the I drank
35 minutes. Yeah. It was rough. And then I kept thinking, I want to now, because I just feel like maybe that's part of the process. And so I'm nauseous, and I hear them, and it makes you just want to just get it out and get it over with. But I didn't. And I said, okay, maybe they're doing it for all of us. So, you're waiting for to kick in. You're like, what am I going to see? What's going to happen? And we start the fire, and they honor the 4 different directions. They do prayers, they sing. And you don't speak, but you can sing a little bit, or have a prayer to yourself if you want. And it starts pouring for hours. And it's cold, and I'm like, what? Why am I here? This is so dumb. What did I do? And second guessing everything. And so we're honoring the water element, and all of a sudden, the visuals start. And I see the earth just start pulsating, like vines and everything moving. The coals are lighting up. Now, for me, I know the earth's alive. I wasn't like, oh, the earth, it's alive, but I was, this is so cool. It reminded me of, I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan, but
I watch a little Star Wars.
It reminded me of where Yoda lived in Dagobah. I was like, this is so cool. So that was fun, and that was cool. And then, very quickly you realize, oh, I'm here to do some work. And you go in with an intention, but I realized that everybody who came there, we were all putting our stuff into the fire to be processed. And then I felt fear, because I'm like, I don't know these people. I don't know who they are, what they've done, what they brought to this ceremony.
Yeah.
And it just reminded you of your humanness, because we're all in this together. You're just in this raw form. Like by the end of the night, you're covered and, probably got some pee on your feet, you've probably stepped in someone's other purge, like you're just wet, you're just, you're at the very most raw form of
Yeah.
what it means to be human. And the ego is long gone. And in the ceremony, as things started to kind of hit, like there was just so much grief. It just felt like everybody kind of started to cry. And there was a lot of grief. It just felt like it just came up almost like suffocating. And, you cry, and I just kept hearing like there's so much grief here collectively in the world, in this ceremony, in my family, like generationally, all of it. And I felt like I had a choice. This is going to be a really rough, long road if I just keep trying to think through this whole part, or I can just, okay, let's just feel it. So the grief comes, you're just like, it's just very intense. And I started to see how different people in the circle would sort of embody like an archetype. So we'd have like the archetype of like the clown, the person who's the jokester, who is trying to make people laugh or be silly. And then you maybe have an archetype of like a father, like maybe some shame around like this father figure who's really feeling it and kind of like embarrassing himself, and you're like, oh, sit down, dad, like that kind of energy. And then you have these women that are just like holding it together, the indigenous women who are just singing and holding it together. And then you have people who are embodying pleasure, and they're just not in their head at all, their body's just moving, they're giggling, and you're just witnessing everyone. And for me to see that was really fun, because of what I do and what I love to do, is just to see, wow, look at all these people really just feeling into what's happening. And I felt like my embodiment was the inner child in that whole process, was dealing with generations of learning how not to feel, and how little kids try to feel, not try, are really good at feeling. And we teach them to suppress their emotions, to be more like us, maybe with good intentions. And so I kept seeing my 4-year-old daughter come in to the ceremony and saying like, I'm not afraid to feel, mama, I'm not afraid to feel. And I was just like, okay, cool. And I didn't really know what it meant. And she kept like yanking at my arm, like, mama, I'm not afraid to feel, I'm not afraid to heal. I'm like, not afraid to feel, not afraid to heal. And I just like kept saying that over and over and over again. And it was just like all this tightness, the nausea. And I just let go and was like, okay, this is it. This is what I do. I feel. And when I was a little kid, I felt very strongly. And that was a lot for people. And so you learn to feel less, whether it's anger or shame or whatever it is. You just like bury it deep down, which it's never going to stay down there. It's going to come up in some way or another. And so I just let myself feel into this superpower of anxiety or depression, which felt like was just me not allowing the full spectrum of emotions to actually come up and be felt. And so then I would hear myself as a 4-year-old saying to my mom, like, Mom, come on, I'm not afraid to feel. I'm not afraid to feel. It's okay. You don't have to teach me what your mom taught you, how not to feel your emotions, in hopes that it would protect you. And then she was 4, and she said that to her mom. And she said, and like all the way up my matriarchal lineage, it was like, we were just like, it's okay. You don't have to keep teaching me to not feel. And it was so cool, and it was just mind-blowing to see like all of these fears I had as a little kid, nightmares and anxiety when I was like in my early teens, and all of it was around not being my true self, like my whole self.
Yeah.
And how empowering it is to have a daughter who has no problem feeling her emotions, and recognizing how I was just doing the same thing that we had been doing for generations, and be like, no, 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 be more like this. Be less wild. Be less yourself. Be less you. Be smaller. Be more palatable. Like, no, no. And like, I'm still learning that too. And that experience was so healing because it allowed me to see people in my matriarchal lineage, parents, grandparents, in a new light of what they had to experience, the suffering that they had to experience over generations, and how they coped with it and how it looked different. Maybe one generation got silent or was like super, super nice to everybody because that's like what they had to do to keep the peace. And then the next generation they were physically ill all the time because the physical manifestation of all of that suffering was too much for their body to bear.
Yeah.
And then I dealt with a lot of like emotional struggle and mental health struggle with anxiety and depression, and really all of it was just because I was denying myself the right to feel. And, you know, that's when 10 years ago I started to do all of this sort of work. And I mean, the experience in itself was, besides birth, one of the most beautiful things I've ever been a part of. Honoring the energies and just the people the space holders who ran the whole ceremony. I mean, you're trusting them with your life. And the way they helped people who were really sick or really struggling or in a dark place, and literally like went over and cradled them like you would need from a mother. It was beautiful. And, you know, I'd start to get to this place of feeling kind of afraid. And then all of a sudden the women would start singing. And like you were talking about women before, like it was just like it was like everything's okay now. I'd hear their voices, my jaw would start vibrating, and I felt like I know these songs like deep in my being somewhere. Like I know these women, like this is what we're meant to do. We're meant to be in ceremony. We're meant to be together. We're meant to be grieving together, feeling together. Like we've done, especially in the last few years, of being so disconnected from other human beings and being like, oh, am I allowed to shake your hand? Or, oh, can I hug you? Or like, are we allowed to be less than 6 feet from each other? Like there's been so much disconnect in a time where literally what we needed more than anything was to be together. And coming out of that ceremony, I just felt like in my career, I'm exactly where I need to be. I've been creating intentional spaces for women to come together, to feel and to grow and transform. And that's all I want to keep doing. And being around those spaces and somewhere like here and what you're doing. And I want to keep supporting people who are doing that, because to me, there's nothing else that matters. Nothing else that matters in the world than like being together and just realizing what this human experience is. It's just chaos, and it's beauty, and it's scary, and it's intense and sad, and it's all the things, and that's okay. And I think the further we come from that, the more like robotic we are. So I think it's really going like one way. People are just like so disconnected from the human experience, and then other people are so deeply feeling, and it's overwhelming sometimes. So they need resources to be able to handle it.
Yeah, the repressed emotion thing, I think that had a lot to do with my journey as well, for sure. Like I used to take something for anxiety, and then I just thought to myself, I was like, you know what, for me personally, I felt like there was a time when I needed it, but I also recognized like I'm giving my power away, you know, like it's up to me to fix whatever this is. So I got off of that. And I think once I started to feel feelings more and just let go, that was when anxiety really started to fade. Like there still is some anxiety in me, but it just doesn't manifest.
That's on the way here.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. It just doesn't manifest in the form of like a panic attack, you know, like I can control and still understand and, you know, feel things. But I wanted to ask you, I think that what you're doing it's very important for sure. But I wanted to ask you, how do you find your community or go about presenting this information to people? Like, do people come looking for you, or what do you do?
A couple of different ways. I mean, I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah.
As I still figure out exactly it is like what I do, you know, like how do you fit all of these things into like a sentence on an Instagram bio, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, a lot of it's just from doing this work for a long time, the people I know and the communities I've been a part of by teaching at different studios and festivals and retreats, being a mom, and just I love going out and meeting people. So I will put myself in situations that make me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, good for you.
Because I know like if I get one person, one connection out of there, it's worth it.
Yeah. And the ripple effect.
Yeah, totally. And just hearing the story. I mean, I went to this event a couple weeks ago and it was not my vibe. And I was just like, why am I here? I feel like so misplaced and like I want to run and hide in a bathroom. And I just kept being like, just go in, just do a lap and then you can go. And, you know, I found my people.
Good for you.
And yeah, I think there's just something beautiful about, I think we need that community so much. I mean, how I find it is I personally, like, I go out and I create it because in some ways I think like that's what you have to do. Some people might be lucky enough where it just kind of shows up and comes to them. And I think it's just based on who you are and how you are and the life that you live, where you're located, where you are in life, what you do maybe for work. But I've had to create it. And I remember like getting back on Facebook recently. Ugh.
Yeah, I'm not a fan either. Yeah. I'm actually not a fan of social media
Yeah,
at all.
but what I saw that was kind of shocking to me was I was like part of these mom groups where I would share the offerings that I had. So many of them were just like, I have no friends. I need to hang out with somebody, like with my kid. And I just felt so heartbroken seeing all of these women everywhere. And I know for me, like if I didn't have my group of friends and family, I don't, even with them, you know, I struggle.
Yeah.
But being able to call them and process things with them and send 15-minute voice notes, you know, and just say like, hey, this is what's happening. I'm so grateful to have them and for our children to grow together. And yesterday we were at Meg's house for her son's 5th birthday and all the kids are just out there. My 1-year-old's like butt naked. They're sliding down the slip and slide and they're all helping her and watching her and just watching all the cousins be together. Yeah. And that was what I loved about my childhood growing up, was being with my cousins on Sundays, hanging out at my mom's house and seeing my girls have that. And then during the week at the co-op, like seeing them be with their friends and most importantly, the moms being together and having a space to come and to feed each other and to talk about what's happening. And, hey, my little one's dealing with this. Like, how are you handling that? You know, and really processing through some really tough stuff in marriages and in, you know, relationships with parents, whatever it is. And I just felt so held. And especially in the last few months when we were struggling a lot, you know, I had people feeding us, like literally making us food, feeding us, checking in, whatever we needed. And I'm like, this is it. This is everything. Yeah. Because no matter what happens, we have this. And if we have this, we have everything.
Yeah, there's a couple key words that we keep going over: support and community. Like that thing that you described there, when someone, I didn't even know this was a thing either, but when someone offered to bring us a meal when my wife went through it, I was like, holy shit, this is like groundbreaking. The level of importance or the meaningfulness that had, because, you know, you're just going through a lot. You're tired, sleepy, like, yeah, you got dogs, I can't cook, you know what I mean? Like, and you still want to be able to eat good. So like someone bringing something over, I can't imagine not having that.
I know.
Now, and for the people that don't, like a lot of times I think about it and I understand a lot of the angst and the struggle that people are going through, because can you imagine like not having that, what that is like? Well, sometimes I think about my mom as a single mom. I'm like, how? Like, how did you do it with 3 kids? And she's a woman, you know?
Having a partner and like family, it's still so hard. Yeah. So single moms is,
imagine doing it with no support.
I know.
Like how? Like how?
I don't know. I have no idea and I don't know how. And it's unbelievable. And I mean, she did a damn good job because look at you. And
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything. Community and support is everything. And I want to encourage people, like, just put yourself out there. You probably feel weird and awkward, but so does everyone else. And I had this one amazing friend, Misa, who I love dearly. And years ago when I first started doing yoga, I remember going to her class on a Thursday night, and after class, she was the teacher, and she came up to me and she was like, hey, do you want to hang out? Like, do you want to be friends? And I was like, okay. Yeah, and she's one of my best friends. And I'm like, oh, that's so refreshing. Like, why waste the time? I'm like, hey, you want to go grab some coffee? And just like, hey, like, we'll text, or DM each other for a while. It's like, hey, do you want to be friends? Yes or no? You can be no. You can say no.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You're like, no, I'm good. I got enough. You're weird.
Yeah.
Or you can be, or you can say, yeah, I could really use a friend, and see what happens, because it's everything. It is everything. And I think that we're realizing more and more how much we need to be together. We just need these spaces of, whether it's workshops where couples are coming together, or mothers coming together, or dads coming together, like men's groups, whatever it is. Like, we just need to prioritize that, like prioritizing that you need to connect with other dads and husbands, so that you can all connect on things that I don't understand what you're going through. I couldn't. And so I can't hold space for you in the way that you need with that. And your partner isn't your therapist either, right? For either of us.
Yeah.
So like, there are things that you can process with friends who understand what you're going through, instead of doing it with your partner who,
don't want to hear that shit.
Well, it's like, yeah, to a certain degree, you share everything. I mean,
that doesn't mean she has a lot going on.
Right, exactly.
Like,
we all have
everything.
a lot going on, all of us. And so the processing that I do with my mamas, like, it's so healing for me. And I want to make sure that my husband has that, and other husbands have that. And it's not just surface level, because I know a lot of them have talked about, like, yeah, we play sports together, or we like go get a couple beers. And, I know Will's been at the point where he's like, I just need something deeper. Like, I can't do this. He's so good, because he's like, I can't fake this. He's like, I can't fake the conversation where you're like, hey, what's going on? What do you do? How's kids? How's your wife? Like, yeah, that's kind and everything, but like, let's talk about whatever it is. Like, let's really dive in.
Yeah. If the engagement like lacks substance, I'm not going.
Yeah.
Like you said, I kind of weigh it, and I don't know if everyone does this, but you're the first person that I ran into that says that you do this. You weigh it out, like, is what I'm going to more valuable than spending time with my family and son? If it's no, it's a no for me.
Right.
Like, I'm just not going.
And I've had a couple things where not until I'm there, I'm like, I'd rather be at home watching Bluey.
Yeah. I've never spent a night away from my son since he's been born. When people do it, I'm like,
I know, when
that's
I see
interesting.
It, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, freedom, good for
right.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have that. I feel like for me, it's probably a little bit of fear too. It's like of the world in general. Like, for me, it's about proximity. Like, the closer I am to him, the safer he is.
Right.
So I'm always going to stay close. Like, I'm not going to leave and then something happens and then and I'm out doing something that meant nothing.
Right.
While,
exactly.
I'm not doing that.
I know.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So let's shift to something more positive. I wanted to ask you. I know that you provide. What is it that you do exactly with the meals?
So we can talk about it a little bit, but right now it's like probably gonna be on pause for a little.
Okay.
So I make bone broth for moms. I mean, anybody can get it, but it's targeted toward mamas.
Yeah.
And it's a specific blend. So it's made with beef bones from like local organic regenerative farms.
Yeah.
And then my amazing acupuncturist came up with a blend to support women, like their kidneys, their liver, their yin energy. So it's this delicious blend of Chinese herbs, and then like ginger and cinnamon and dates. And I make it for them and I sell it. So right now it is at Carlton Cafe in Quakertown. But with all of the things going on, like moving and everything, I am establishing a foundational relationship with this amazing organic farm in New Hope. And they are working on getting a commercial kitchen. And when they do, I will just be making tons and tons of broth. Because I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old at home that I'm with all the time, it's not easy for me to leave and go do that. But that's why I like it too, because I can make a lot at once and then not have to make it again for a while. But I drink it every single day. And it is bone broth, but it's really meat stock, which isn't like as cool sounding, but I use the bones and I use the like the meat itself, and it's just very healing for the gut. And for me, I wanted something easy for moms who are very often going to just skip a meal because they don't have time to make something. And I thought, okay, what if you just heat up a mug of bone broth, just get some little bit of nourishment so that you can keep showing up and being supported and supporting yourself a little bit, because we're just depleted all the time.
Yeah, I'm depleted a lot too.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those people, I get caught up in like society and culture too, like it's about production and moving and going.
Oh,
And
yeah.
but I sleep. Like I definitely sleep. Like I'm a 7, 8 hour sleeper. I go to bed early, but I
That's
don't know. I
nice.
just like to go. Yeah, it's definitely my wife gets up
That's
in the kid with the
nice.
morning. Yeah, I'm
What's
definitely
that like?
I'm
No, I'm
sleeping
just
till 8 or 9. It's like, here, buddy, we're gonna put on National Geographic for an hour or
Nice.
so and watch something informative, but it's not just cartoons.
Right.
I'm not getting up.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
care what you do.
I know this morning I was not ready to get up. I was just like, Will and I will look at each other and like, me, no, you, me,
Yeah, who's
no.
got this? You know what I'll do? I'll say, hey, buddy, do you want mommy to go? And of course, he's always gonna pick mommy. I always use the trick. She's like, look, this is
She's
a
like,
team effort.
screw
Don't keep
you,
doing
man.
that. Yeah, every time. I use that all the time because he's never picking daddy. Like he's always picking mommy.
Yes.
I feel like I need to start drinking more bone broth because your skin looks amazing. You
Ah.
got like radiant, like glowing skin. Seriously, I feel like I need bone
Man.
broth in my life.
Lots of sunlight. Bare feet. I've really been prioritizing like in the morning before you go check your phone. I don't have time to meditate in the morning. Okay, I don't make time to meditate in the morning. Let me
Yeah.
reframe that. But I get up with the girls, and the first thing we do is go outside barefoot on the grass in the sun, even if it's cloudy, even if it's 5 minutes. I'm like, I have to, it balances your circadian rhythm. It helps your hormones. Like, it's so good for you to just get out there, breathe, and they love it. They need it. In the winter, when I'm not doing that, it's so apparent. We're sick a lot. I'm not feeling as patient.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's good stuff.
Yeah, when you hear people, I'm sure you definitely heard about it, grounding, the term grounding. I never thought much of it, but I did go outside and work the other day, and there is a feel to it. There's definitely something. There's a feel to it. I don't know, the energy of the earth or what it is.
Yeah. It's
It
like,
definitely feels different, and your feet feel better because shoes are
I think it's the
kind of
negative
unnatural.
ions or something.
Something's a
But
little weird, but you can feel it. Like
yeah.
I like it too.
It is. It's so grounding. Will's always barefoot all the time.
Yeah.
And our kids are a lot of the time too. And you see people like, well, put some shoes on, put some socks on the kids. They're going to catch a cold,
Yeah.
I'm like, no, they need to be like, we all just need to be more feral.
Yeah, just relax a little bit.
Yeah, we need to be more wild. And I think that's why I love this work, because it's just like, how do you get back to that inner knowing of just that wildness of just community, connection, feeling yourself, like feeling into the full spectrum of emotions, and being weird, and embracing that.
Yeah, I love it. Close out on that one. Be weird.
Be weird.
You want to give out your socials, your information before we wrap up?
It's Sarobawellness. So SAROBA wellness is just the Instagram. And
what else is going on with your
everything's on
websites?
there.
I meant to say this. You have beautiful websites. I
you.
love the pictures. I love the colors. Like, it's very artistic.
Thank you.
It would make me want to do whatever you got going on there. Like, I like it.
Thank you. I'm still like working through some of it, but yeah. So sarobawellness.com.
Yeah.
And right now I have an online course where I help women transform their expertise into an online course for them to sell to create some passive income.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just like me being a mom and realizing I have a very small moment of energy where I can give to work, but like we need to have support financially. And so just trying to like get creative around that. And it's been fun because a lot of it is the foundational work that goes into showing up as what your company is. So I love that. We have a 6-month mentorship that we're almost done with now. And I've been doing one-on-one coaching, which I'm about to put all of this stuff on my website, but one-on-one coaching with women who have businesses, moms who have businesses, and just kind of helping them stay grounded. And the big thing, I think, is helping women create a life where they don't need self-care. For so long, I taught self-care practices. And I had this epiphany, like, who the hell has time for this shit? And it's the first thing that's going to go. It's the first thing that's going to go off the list. It needs extra time, extra money, extra energy. And I don't even have that. You might create this beautiful routine, but like to do it, it's just, before I had kids, I had,
Yeah, because it takes away from that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what if we just create a life that we don't need a break from? What if we infuse care into our life? So we go out in the morning for 5 minutes with my kids, and I take a tub, and I prioritize nourishing my body with nutrient dense foods so that I'm not running on empty. And I communicate with my husband, and we prioritize pleasure and intimacy. And like, that's not just about being in the bedroom, but just like communicating effectively and having fun and finding the joy in the little moments. And, so I love working and creating those spaces for women to come together. And the latest workshop that we have is the Whole Self series, which is an in-person workshop. And that the first one is July 19th, and it's how to honor rage and joy. So myself and my best friend Erica, who's a holistic psychotherapist, run this workshop. It's at Tuckamone Farm, like right by Peddler's Village in Alaska. And so we'll build a fire, and we will, she'll give a little talk. And
When's
then,
the date? When's
Friday, July 19th.
Okay,
Yeah. So it's on my website under the Whole Self, and you can get your tickets there. And we'll build a fire, we'll do a talk, and then we'll do a rage expression. So in a safe, trauma-informed space, this is the most important thing, I think, is that a lot of times we're like triggering people to feel their emotions and then just like leaving them to hang.
Yeah.
But we are very intentional about the space that we're creating. That's why we have a therapist who's there
I like
and guiding them through to allow this emotion to come up to the surface, to be felt, to be expressed around a fire with a bunch of women. I think it's like the day before the full moon.
Yeah.
And then I'll guide them through like a little somatic practice to activate the heart meridian, which is the organ that, this is the meridian, I'm just going like this, but which is the organ that is correlated with rage and anger. And so, I'm just excited to do that. And then we'll have snacks, as always, at every workshop we have. We always have food. And we'll have a community share. So we'll have each of the shadow emotions over the next year, like every 2 months or so, we'll run a workshop. And they'll all be in person at different places in the area. But there's a lot of virtual stuff as well.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like you got a lot going on, and considering that you got a whole family and a whole husband and 2 whole kids, you're still
it's like a little bit here, a little bit there, because I get, not that I get bored easily, but I have a lot of different facets that I need to express. And so it's fun to do this for a bit, and then I make broth, and then, for me, it's not like a full work week. I dedicate some time to this, let that run on its own. I dedicate time to this, I let that run on its own. So it sounds like a lot, but with a well-oiled system and intention and alignment, it's great because I don't get bored.
I need to figure out some of your routine, because this situation here is kicking my ass.
We'll figure it out.
I'm doing it Monday through Sunday. But I want to thank you again for coming out. I appreciate you sharing your story and your journey with your home births.
Yeah.
It was a lot, and congratulations on birthing 2 healthy children.
Thank you.
And being an amazing wife.
Thank
at
you.
home, to an amazing husband. Shout out to that guy too.
Yeah, love you, Willie.
Yeah. All right, thanks for joining us, everyone.
Cool.
We'd like to thank you for tuning in to The Awakened Avoidant. We hope our convo has provided you with insight, inspiration, and healing energy. As you go about your week, let's continue to work together to heal ourselves and our community. Stay safe and continue to spread healing vibes wherever you go. Catch a new episode Wednesday weekly on all platforms.